In the 1970s, there was a law in place that made it so that news providers had to provide free and fair opinions on both sides. So if you wanted to be a news agency or news media, you had to follow this law. That law was put in place in the 1950s. Well, it expired in the 1970s, and it was never renewed. So starting in the 1980s to today, there was no requirement for a news agency to provide free and fair, equitable news.
Yeah.
It opened the door for them to create completely biased, totally one-sided, inaccurate news. There was no legal consequence anymore. And that was the birth of the 24-hour news cycle, right? That's where CNN came out of. So what you're seeing, like the example that you just shared, as sad as it is to think that a human life was lost like that, right? There's going to be a headline tomorrow in a progressive newspaper that says, crazy Trump supporters said Biden was going to stage a coup and burned himself alive. And then you're going to have a Fox News headline that says,
you're so good
crazy Biden supporter.
Why are you so good at this?
Burned himself alive, right? That's what's going to happen.
You're so good at this because that's what I was talking about. That's why I went live, because I was like, hey, let's get the real story as soon as possible, because I've been out there covering this stuff. And like you said, that the first thing they were trying to do was say that it was a Trump supporter. But then the sign came up, and the sign was being held up by the kid. And it was a sign that said, you know, Trump and Biden are going to stage a coup. If I could find this sign real quick so I could show the people maybe on the screen, or maybe it'll be on the screen now. But yeah, that you're right. I think that it's important, you know, to get ahead, or to try to get it as far as, you know, at least for me, I try to get the real news possible. Like when I filmed Trump, but I'm noticing these things, and I hate that, because I would say I'm supporting Trump in 2024. I'm also covering him as much as I can, you know, getting ahead of news and trying to defeat, like I find myself trying to defeat the mainstream media. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that happened with me was that I went viral for a video recently, like a few days ago, where I was filming Trump, and there were cheers, right? There were cheers. People were excited. The mainstream media then grabs my footages, and then they start saying Trump was being booed. And I'm like, wow, there's just like, this is just where we're at. Like, and I get it, because the right does the same thing. The right, trust me, they do the same thing. But real quick, I want to stick on this this situation, because so is the CIA is CIA back on? Are they so they're being funded by the Biden administration this whole time, or are they still going private sector?
So CIA is tied to the federal budget, okay, without a doubt, right? But the oversight committees within the Congress and the White House have the ability to kind of turn up or turn down how much funding goes to CIA. They're also able to turn up and turn down how much money is spent on private contracts to support intelligence. So what you saw with President Trump was that he turned up the dial to increase external funding for private intelligence and turned down the dial on funding them internally, essentially redirecting money from the federal government and putting it into the private companies, private organizations. The Biden administration has reversed that a little bit. But here's the thing, the little dirty secret that the Biden administration never wants to admit to. In many ways, all they've done is continued Trump-level intelligence initiatives and just changed their name. Trump was the one that turned on everybody's attention to what's happening in China, right? Trump was the one that started putting in restrictions on Chinese people, Chinese companies, Chinese trade. Well, the Biden administration continued the same policies. All they did was cancel the old name and introduce it with a new name. So in many ways, what Trump was doing in a national security direction was sound. It was all sound judgment carried on by the Biden administration, but they don't want to admit to that, right? Really, where it comes down to where things are very different between Trump and Biden is in the economics of the world and how economic stimulus is used inside the United States. Trump wants to encourage more business activity, and business activity will stimulate the government. Biden wants to include more stimulus direct to consumer. So each individual will put more money into the country.